Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My wife, Sarah, and I were at a fancy restaurant when I saw my best friend, Rick, heading our way. I quickly whispered to Sarah, "That's Rick coming over. Remember I told you he's been my best friend since we were little kids? Well, he has been, but be careful around him. He's a real ladies' man." Sarah looked at me softly and said, "Isn't he the friend who's really rich?" I nodded to Sarah as I stood up to shake Rick's hand. But he wasn't having any of that. He grabbed me in a big bear hug. It was a little embarrassing in such a public place. "Tom, damn, it's good to see you," Rick said. "It's been way too long." Then he slowly looked Sarah up and down, his eyes lingering on her chest. "Can I guess this is your lovely wife, Sarah? I was in Singapore when you guys got married, but I did send a gift. Hope you liked it." "Oh, you're the friend who sent Tom that new truck, right?" Sarah gushed, standing up and holding her arms out for a hug. "Sarah, this is my best friend, Rick," I managed to say as he gently but firmly pushed me aside so he could hug Sarah. "Rick, meet my wife, Sarah. Tom's told me so much about you. You never mentioned he was so tall and good-looking," Sarah quickly pointed out as she hugged Rick longer than I thought was right for a married woman. "What brings you to Daytona?" "Rick, I just bought a condo over at the dunes and I'm getting it fixed up. I'm staying in a hotel nearby and just stopped in for a lonely dinner." "You bought a condo at the dunes and you're remodeling it? They're practically brand new. I can't imagine you'd need to change much," Sarah replied. "I heard the smaller ones start at over $1 million. "That's true," Rick agreed. "But the bedrooms felt a bit small to me. Luckily, a penthouse was available, so I bought it. I'm having it painted and getting new furniture." It was clear to me that Rick was trying his best to impress Sarah. He always knew what women were interested in and went straight for it. Sarah was all about the fancy things in life. I had a decent job and some savings, but Sarah seemed determined to spend us into the poorhouse. We were celebrating our 3rd anniversary, yet she seemed happy to ignore me for Rick. It was so obvious some of the other people eating were looking my way with pity. "It looks like our food is coming, Sarah. Maybe we should sit down and eat while it's still hot," I suggested, hoping we could focus on each other again. Sarah didn't argue, but she upped the ante. She just glanced at our steaks and said, "Rick, you have to join us. Tom always talks so fondly of you, and I'd love to get to know you better. My husband's best friend is my friend too." "I hate to intrude on a romantic dinner," Rick started, and I nodded in agreement. "Nonsense," Sarah interrupted immediately. "Waiter, my husband's friend, Rick, will be joining us for dinner. Could you bring another place setting? Thanks so much." The waiter turned and went to get it. In less than a minute, Rick was sitting at our table, talking nonstop. I managed to play a game of solitaire on my phone while he and Sarah talked about everything and nothing. I was pretty much tuning them out until I heard Sarah say my name. "Tom, we have 2 spare rooms. Why don't we have Rick stay with us? You two could catch up, and Rick could have some home cooking. His condo will be ready in about a week, so it wouldn't be any trouble at all." I was stunned. Sarah thought Rick would enjoy her cooking? I had no doubt she'd be ordering expensive takeout and putting it on our best plates. Knowing Rick, I was pretty sure he'd be eating at the local diner by the end of the week. I had told her what a player he was, and I had to admit she was definitely the kind of woman who would catch his eye. My first wife, Helen, had died after 22 years of marriage. She and Rick had been great friends, but I never worried about anything inappropriate between them. Helen was the most trustworthy and loyal wife a man could ask for. Sadly, she died suddenly from a heart attack 5 years ago. I grieved for over a year before meeting Sarah at a charity event. She was 11 years younger than me, but it didn't seem to bother her. We got engaged quickly and had been married for just 3 years. It was Sarah's 2nd marriage. She had divorced her first husband after she caught him cheating, or so she said. One thing I would never do was cheat on my wife. It just wasn't in me, and Sarah knew it. It didn't seem to take much convincing on Sarah's part to get Rick to stay with us, unless you count the way she leaned towards him, showing off her chest, hanging on his every word. Her breasts seemed to have a life of their own as they moved, jiggled, bounced, practically begging to be free. Rick stared, completely mesmerized. Of course, Rick didn't have to get up early for work. That's a curse for those of us who don't have millions in the bank with more coming in every day. Sarah hadn't worked since she divorced her first husband. Apparently, she did pretty well in that divorce. She made me sign a prenuptial agreement saying I would never have any claim to her money, no matter how long we were married. I was okay with it since I had a steady income from my investments and a good job. When I got home on Monday evening, Sarah and Rick seemed even friendlier than they had been at the restaurant. Dinner was ready, and it was really good. I checked the trash can, just as I expected, and found containers from a fancy takeout place. Rick and Sarah were so caught up in their own world that they didn't even notice when I left the living room, a bit annoyed, and stomped upstairs to bed. I failed to embarrass myself because they didn't even see. I was quite surprised when I came home on Wednesday evening and found Sarah seemingly waiting for me. She was sitting on the expensive couch she just had to have, and next to her, way too close for a guy she had just met, sat Rick. "Tom, we need to talk," Sarah started. I was surprised again. It was only Wednesday. How the hell had Rick worked his magic that fast? I knew he was good at everything he tried, but this was impressive as hell. I just knew it was going to cost me. "Rick and I have realized we're soulmates," Sarah explained. "We didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. We both feel terrible about it, but there's no denying the incredibly strong connection we feel for each other. Tom, I'm going to divorce you as soon as it's final. I'm going to marry Rick. Please don't try to talk me out of it. I'll be damned if I'll give up my house and half my life savings just because you couldn't keep your legs closed and this jerk couldn't keep his thing in his pants. I'll fight you every step of the way," I declared with more anger than I actually felt. "That's so typical of an insecure little man," Sarah said with disgust. "I didn't marry you for money, and I don't want any when we divorce. Rick and I both believe the divorce will go much quicker if I just walk away with the money I brought into the marriage. What do you think, Tom? Is that enough of an incentive for a quick divorce?" Sarah demanded. "Where do you want me to sign?" I cleverly replied. I knew money meant more to her than I ever did. "I'll be spending the next few nights with Rick while we wait for his condo to be painted. I don't want to hear any complaints. No sniveling, crying, or whining," Sarah insisted. I simply nodded, turned, and left for the nearest bar. It's amazing how fast a divorce can go through the courts when everyone involved is eager for it, and one of them is very wealthy. A few months later, I was single again. The weekend after my divorce was final, I went back to the same restaurant Sarah and I had been in when she first met Rick. I found him sitting at a table for two. I just walked in and joined him. "Do you want to kiss my feet here in the restaurant? Or wait for a more private setting?" Rick asked with a big grin. "I don't know how you can be so happy. You didn't even have to ask Sarah to marry you. Now she can go after you for fraud, breach of contract, blatant lying, or just being such a prick to her," I said. "Not going to happen," Rick replied calmly as usual. "You don't see the big picture. Why don't you enlighten me then? I know Sarah, and she's nothing if not stubborn, vindictive, and mean as hell. You didn't feel that way when you asked her to marry you, did you?" Rick asked with a chuckle. "Think about it. What was the final straw that made you decide you wanted to get rid of her?" "I don't know. Maybe it was finding out her damned personal trainer was sleeping with her 3 times a week. For some reason, that flipped a switch in me. She had me over a barrel. If I went for a divorce, even for adultery, she would have gotten half of everything plus alimony. That's why I called you for suggestions. I never thought you'd get her to ask for a divorce by Wednesday, though. That was amazing. Your acting must have improved over the years," I added. "It has more to do with how my bank account has improved over the years. Once she realized how much money I had, she couldn't seduce me fast enough. I have to say, I'm going to miss her. Sleeping with your wife was one of the greatest highlights of my life," Rick gleefully admitted. "That particular skill of hers is what got me into this mess," I replied seriously. "You did a great job getting me free from a gold-digging user, but why aren't you more worried about how she'll take being dumped? She might figure out the whole plan. She might have questionable morals, but she's clever. Remember I mentioned the big picture?" Rick asked. "For an engagement gift, I gave Sarah a weekend at the Ritz with a spa day included." "You idiot," I spat at him. "Didn't I tell you that Sarah Stud, the personal trainer, is now working as a masseur at the Ritz? She could have run into him." "No chance. I asked for him by name when I booked the spa day," Rick revealed. "Last night, I decided to visit her just to see how happy she was with her gift. Since I had paid for the room, I had a key. Fortunately, I also had my phone set to record video. Not surprisingly, I found her exceedingly happy with her gift. She was with him." "You have video? She was cheating on you?" I managed as I slowly put my thoughts together. "You must have been very upset, perhaps angry enough to break off the engagement?" "Sarah was devastated by my unforgiving attitude," Rick responded with a smirk. "It was the first time she had ever done anything like that. It would never happen again." I agreed with her on that. "It won't be happening to me. She's out apartment hunting right now, at least between her sobs and curses." "You owe me dinner for getting her to say she wanted a divorce on Wednesday," Rick added with a wide smile. "You saved me a fortune, bro. I'd be delighted to buy you dinner. You've always been there for me. Sarah has no clue about real connections, but you do. That's what real friendship is," I replied. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.